Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Thursday evening. My name is Steven, and I am the host. As always, it is Family Trust Respect Week for the Chargers. Excited to dive into all of the good stuff for Chargers Raiders Week. Joining me to do that is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Yeah, I don't know about trust and respect for most Raiders fans, but it is about family this week for me, at least. My mom and dad will be going to the game, and but we'll see who goes home a sad person.
Hopefully your dad. No shade.
Yes, I do hope my dad is sad this weekend, honestly. Well, I'm more invested, hours wise and financially in the Chargers winning. So
yeah. I work with a bunch of Raiders fans. Fresno is the Raiders town. It still is the local team here. And it's not a lot of negative vibes in Raiderville up here, at least. I don't know how it's going to be this week. I was on a podcast for one of the Raiders podcasts this week, and I was like, hey, all of you guys listening, just stay home. You guys all hate Josh McDaniels that much. Just stay home. Yes. You don't need to go to the game this week. Yeah, protest. Yeah. This is the game that you should protest. Don't go.
Yeah, well, it sounds like they've been protesting at their own home stadium. It's just the LA stadium and the California stadiums that they take over. I mean, I've seen full Raiders stadiums or Chargers stadiums at Qualcomm, but with, against the Raiders with like Terrell Pryor at quarterback. I mean, it doesn't matter. They find a way to fill that stadium.
Yeah. I think I saw they're projecting, at least Vivid Seats is projecting like 60% Raiders fans. So Charger fans, if you're listening, go to the game. Use Ticketmaster to go see the game. Shout out Ticketmaster. In all seriousness, should be a fun one. Chargers and Raiders games are always entertaining, even if both teams suck, even if one team is really good and the other team sucks. It's always a great game. It always has a kind of it. I was laughing this week when they asked Justin Herbert about like if he's old enough to know about like the 80s and 90s of the rivalry. He's like, well, I wasn't around then, but so no.
I kind of get that though. Like to a certain extent, that's how I feel. Everyone's like, F the Raiders. I hate the Raiders. Some players, some fans hate the Raiders, but I'm like, as soon as I was able to actually speak and put words together, and ever since then, the Raiders have been awful. So like, I don't really have this like, oh, I hate the Raiders. They've just been terrible. I feel bad for the Raiders. I don't hate them.
Yeah, I've said on this before. The team that I grew up like hating in terms of the AFC West is the Broncos. Like I have spent more of my life and more time arguing with Broncos fans than I have Raiders fans. And the Broncos were, there's the whole like Rivers and Cutler dynamic. Obviously the Broncos got Peyton like right as the Chargers were kind of starting downhill. So I was like super annoyed at that aspect of it. So yeah, I've always disliked the Broncos more than I have the Raiders, just because the Raiders have been bad for most of my life.
Yeah, I'd agree there. Yeah. And then more recently, just the Chiefs. And I hate them, but I don't. It's like, how am I supposed to dislike Andy Reid? Like, what do I do with that? I like them.
Yeah. All right. Let's dive into this game. First and foremost, we do have to discuss a very lengthy injury report for the Chargers this week. Raiders also going through it a little bit. So I guess it's probably pretty good season to have an early bye. Obviously, we did talk about the Mike Williams injury and that impact on Wednesday's show on the Chargers channel. But this is a this is a big injury report, man. It feels like end of the season injury report, and it's week 4. So lot to get into here. Joey Bosa has not practiced. That is, kind of continuing the trend. It sounds like that's going to be the same kind of snap count situation until after the bye week. A little bit of an illness thing going around the team again with Gerald Everett and Corey Linsley, both dealing with that. Brandon Staley said they are not related, but they are both sick and have not practiced. So something to monitor there, Tyler. One of the things that I'm super curious about in general is like how much more does this team use 12 personnel without Mike Williams? Tej from Sumer Sports, a good friend of the show, sent me a link of the 12 personnel usage, and the Chargers are actually the 4th highest rate in the league right now. They're 2nd in the league in EPA per play out of 12 personnel, so they've been using a lot and been very effective out of it, which makes sense. You're getting a lot of efficiency right now out of Gerald Everett and Donald Parham. But I am curious if that goes up without Mike Williams as kind of a way to mitigate that damage.
Great question. My follow-up would be, is Gerald Everett healthy?
Yeah, right.
Are we he's it's an illness thing, but are we operating 12 personnel with Donald Parham and Trey McKitty or Stone Smart? Yes, they need to stop eating at whatever restaurant they've been going to. I think Corey's had it 3 times, at least twice.
At least twice,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, he had a bad one last year. What did he officially have? It was like he had some nasty fever or something.
Yeah, he was like hospitalized with it.
That's right. Jeez,
yeah.
Yeah, Corey, stop going to Mastro's in Newport or whatever you guys are doing for team meetings. Yeah, rough one. I am very curious to see we'll talk about all the different things they could do with Mike out, but yeah, I could see them leaning into that. I didn't realize that they had run it so often. Like, to me, there are moments for sure. Like, I think Donald Parham's touchdown, or one of them, the second one, all 4 tight ends were on the field, which is cool. Like, I love that they can just lean into that, and it worked. So curious what they'll do there, but I am surprised that 12 personnel was so high, though their effectiveness makes sense. Like, one, because Herbert and the offense is working. 2, if you throw it to Donald Parham, it's a touchdown, a first down. So yeah, of course that makes sense. And then Gerald Everett generates his own yards above expectations. So yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. But with Everett out, I don't know. I don't know.
If Everett's not out there, then you're not using 12 personnel all that much. I mean, it's been a way for them to create some explosives. I think, like, even when they threw that seam route to Stone Smart, like, that was a way for them to use that. And they do kind of keep one in blocking sometimes from time to time too. So if Everett's not out there, then you're not doing it as much. But hopefully he's okay. Hopefully Corey Linsley is okay. The 2 Chargers that have been injured have been limited in practice, and that's Austin Eckler and Eric Kendricks. I've been asked about, like, who do I think is more likely, and I feel like traditionally Brandon Staley prefers to have these guys log at least 2 full practices coming off of an injury, a multi-week injury like this. What's your vibe around Eckler and Kendricks playing this week?
I think neither play, to be completely honest. Not that they shouldn't, but I just feel like with the bye coming up and with how important I think they think these guys are, I'll be honest, if it's the Chiefs, if it's let's say the Lions, if it's the Ravens, if it's anybody else, maybe those guys are forcing themselves out there.
Sure.
This Raiders team stinks. Like, they are god awful. And who knows what their quarterback situation is going to be this week. I don't know if this is the game you force your guys out there. It would be about, missing this game wouldn't be like out of the norm. I think it's right around what we'd sort of expect. Yes, they could play. I just don't see I get it. You're better with Eckler. You're better with Eckler. I think you're better with Kendricks, but we've only seen, 95% of one game. I just don't know if this is the game you force your guys out there, So I hope that they're smart enough with this. I think if either play, I think it would be Kendricks. But at the same time, I kind of like the vibe of what's going on with Kenneth Murray and to a certain extent Nick Neiman. So of course, like the long-term plan is to have Eric Kendricks out there. But I give it another week, see how it goes.
See, I kind of think that maybe this is somewhat to do with Austin Eckler being more vocal, but I kind of
Mm,
lean more Eckler plays than Kendricks would.
mhm.
These older players dealing with hamstring injuries, like it's a lot for them to get back in a short time, as we saw Keenan Allen last year come back a little bit too quickly. Austin Eckler dealing with his ankle injury. It sounds like he's trying to at least get out there. We haven't heard from Eric Kendricks, but um, I kind of lean more towards Eckler returning being more likely than Kendricks.
I see. I agree with you with that part that he's more vocal, and so that would make more sense. At the same time, I think it's so much more difficult to replace him that you don't want to rush him. So I almost feel like he might want to be able to get there out there more, and maybe he could get out there more. But I almost feel like the team would go, "Look, dude, we got the Cowboys and the Chiefs after the bye.
Yeah,
Let's not mess this up again. Like we really need you out there. 'Cause they're not winning that game if he's not out there. I'm not
right.
picking them anyway, but they're not going to win that game with Eckler's not out there.
Yeah, especially I mean that Cowboys defensive line is disgusting. Like you need to have
Nasty.
like a legitimate like check down option and I don't think we've seen enough from Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller, Elijah Dotson, who apparently they call dot, like just straight up dot, according to Kellen Moore today, which is new. But I don't think we've seen anything from the three of them to kind of merit really any trust in the check down department as much as we would like to see them be able to play that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see something this week. I think it'd be nice to see them and Spiller if he's out there more, Dotson, whoever it is, when they're not having 8 guys in the box and they're not blitzing 50 million times in a game in a more, I would say, normal setting. But yeah, we have not seen enough yet to feel really good about those guys.
Yeah, I see a couple people pointing out in the chat like I'm not putting any kind of stock in the Cowboys Cardinals game. Like every single year, these teams just come out and lay an egg every once in a while. I mean, the Urban Meyer Jaguars beat the Bills that year, and the Bills made the AFC Championship. So like it just kind of tends to happen and get weird at certain points throughout the season. I don't think that anybody should really put any kind of stock in the Cardinals beating the Cowboys in terms of like being lower on the Cowboys in terms of thinking they're not very good. Like that defense is like even without Trayvon Diggs, like it still is very clearly the best defensive roster in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. They're without Diggs is definitely a big one. And in that particular game, I think they were out 3 of their starting offensive linemen, which I could barely make it through a Charger season with 1 tackle missing, let alone 3 of the linemen. So, yeah, hopefully they're healthy. But
Yeah. Interesting super chat here from our guy Richard. He said the Steelers invest
hmm.
a ton of money into hamstring research and prevention. I hope the Chargers are doing the same. Um, I don't know. I think like the investment in the training staff, like they revamped the entire group. Like everybody is different. So I don't know. Like I don't think the Chargers and these hamstring injuries are related. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know what my take is here regarding the training staff.
I don't have much of one. We'll see. To me, it was, I mean, hamstrings, it stinks. I wonder. I don't know. I think it's more the season-ending injuries that was more of our concern last season. So
Yeah.
far, it's been better, obviously. So we'll see how that goes. And some guys are honestly just repeat on the list guys like Joey. Oh, he's hurt again. Wow. Corey Linsley's sick
Derwin.
again. Wow. Derwin's sick again. So we'll see how everyone finishes the rest of the week. Guys like Elohi Gilman, I don't recall him being injured that often before, but we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, he had the one quad injury, but yeah, let's get to those guys. I think this is the biggest pressing need of the week, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Derwin James and Alohi Gilman both being on the injury report. Neither of them have practiced. I would be shocked if Derwin James plays at this point, given the way that it looked on the broadcast and how like instantly like he was wrapped up and just looked at
Mhm.
on the sideline. Um, So I don't think Derwin James is going to play in this game, which is always a shame because Derwin's one of the best players in the league. Alohi Gilman, Brandon Staley said about Alohi Gilman on Monday that it was just like some bumps and bruises. So maybe there's a chance that he could play, but he has not practiced yet. So I feel like that's trending more towards like a game time decision at this point, but I have no real read on that situation.
Yeah. I don't even know where this came from because he was literally out there on the final drive. And I remember the play.
They didn't say anything about a post game. It was like the next day where it was like Staley like brought it up out of nowhere, like, yeah, Alohi Gilman starts. Like, what? When?
Yeah. And here we are. That does seem game time decision, like you said, with Derwin. I don't see him playing. Alohi, again, if we had seen him get up gingerly or anything, you can make some sort of assumption, but he was just like, oh, he's on the injury report. So yeah, it could be game time decision. We talked about safety depth, and well, here we are. It's funny when you talk about certain positions where you might need some depth, and then for some reason, those are the ones that pop up on the injury report after a few weeks. That's a real bummer. Dang, I can't imagine both the safeties being out, but here we are in week 4, and it's a shame because like Alohi had a really good game.
He did. He was awesome on tape too.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, everyone's saying it, so I might as well bring it up. Thank you very much, Mom. I love you. Thank you for the super sticker. Everyone's saying in the chat, so I got to bring it up. But yes, my mom is amazing, and she'll be with me at the game. A converted Chargers fan. I don't know if she's a converted, but she's now a Chargers fan.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
man, I'm concerned. Again, this Raiders team has some issues, right? But like this is a game where you need safety help over the top of Devontae Adams. Heck, even Jacoby Myers is a quality receiver. And if Jimmy Garoppolo plays, which we don't know, but if Jimmy plays, like he's going to give the safeties some opportunities to make plays. Like that's just who he is. Like you need to have guys who can come down with those moments. And oh, by the way, like Josh Jacobs is probably due for 100-yard game like any moment now. Which is great because, that of course is the Chargers, but you're going to be potentially starting JT Woods and Raheem Lane in this game. And then AJ Finley or Dean Marlowe as your 6th defensive back. Like that's dicey, man. It really is. Like this is a game where the lack of safety that could really cost them. And, obviously very difficult to prepare for both starting safeties to be injured, but this is kind of what we were concerned about all summer long. And hopefully JT Woods and Raheem Lane are up for the task. But the thought of like AJ Finley, who barely played in the preseason as your safety 3 that's tough. It's tough to be out there without these two guys.
The Chargers, as I did some math this morning, are on pace to allow 164 explosive plays through 17 games, which is 30 more than the Houston Texans allowed last year as the league worst. Do I think that will continue for the Chargers? Maybe. I can't even say no, because you have these. So now you're facing, again, like you said, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams, Jimmy G might be out there, which doesn't do a whole lot, but like it makes things more difficult. Sure. Josh Jacobs, like the rushing attack has not worked for the Raiders. If you had asked me what his yardage total would be through 3 games after having 2,000 whatever, like I didn't expect this, but they did look a little bit better last week against the Steelers. And again, like right before it happened, or maybe as it happened in the Vikings game, it's like, oh my gosh, the Vikings haven't had one rush over 10 yards.
And then they had like 3 in a row.
Yeah, like on the same drive. They're like, oh, cool. They've quadrupled their output in 4 minutes. So I don't know, man. Like, again, I totally think the Chargers will win this game. And the Raiders have some health issues as well. But man, like it's going to be a bit rough sledding for the defense this week without their 2 safeties, especially because if anything else, the safeties have been at least fine to good or performing well to making some plays. It's the corners that have been an issue. Now the safeties are out.
Yeah.
So it's
So
a
all
bit
bad.
dicey.
Yeah. We gotta this is funny to me that your dad still does a super chat, but only $1.99 because it's Raiders week. Nicely done. Nicely done.
Thank you. For what it's worth, my dad bought the 3 tickets for us to all go. So
Yeah. Yeah.
after all the fees on Ticketmaster or whatever StubHub, like, all you got is $1.99 left after those darn fees.
Yeah. Another one from Richard, JC and JT trying to cover post by Devontae Adams. It's a little dicey for sure.
Do you want to talk about JC? Does anybody know what's
Man,
going on with JC? Do they know what's going on? JC doesn't know what's going on with
JC
JC,
doesn't
man.
know. I was gonna say it's such a bizarre situation. I can't remember anything like this. Like I think the Chargers probably came into this offseason with like a real plan for JC. And then he was like ready for week 1 of training camp, day 1. He was like, I'm ready to go. He's on NFL Network. Like, I'm 100%. Like, let's go. To me, this whole thing about him like being benched, being a healthy scratch, all of this stuff, I think kind of stems back for me from the setback that he experienced at like the middle of August ish. It was like the 3rd week of training camp. And then we didn't see him out there for a couple weeks. And like, I think this can kind of result back to that point. And then just like being thrown out there against Tyreek Hill and being benched and like all this stuff, like it's already so difficult to come back from an injury like this and then also have all of this other stuff. So it's just, I feel bad for him. Like I've said before, I think that the Chargers probably should have just like headed into the season and say, hey, like, we know you're cleared. Like, let's continue to practice and like work on some things. You're going to be a healthy scratch, but like, don't worry. Like, we're going to have a plan for you to get back into things. But just like take it easy and ramp up into it. I think them throwing him out there against the Dolphins and shadowing Tyreek Hill was probably a rough start to that ramp up period for him.
Like, didn't we just do this? Like, didn't we just do this last year? With the whole, he's good enough, get him out there and throw him out there for 100% of the snaps. Whoops, didn't work. Bench, setback. I don't think he has another bone in his foot at least, so there's that. But this whole situation is so puzzling to me. And, I don't know if JC's trying to also kind of play the media a little bit where he's like, well, it was the coach's decision. I can't get into some of the things that were said. I'll just leave it all behind me. And, I don't really get it. I'm confused too. So I don't know if he's trying to play some of the media game as well out there. Not that I think he would do that, but again, it's just so confusing. I'm surprised he's playing this week, to be honest, because now I don't
theoretically playing. We don't know that yet. He says that he's playing, but we don't know that.
I don't know. He's like, we're going to kick their ass this week. Like that's his quote or something similar.
Which is
to
great.
That. I hope so, man. It's kind of a bummer. It's like, all right, you get to go back out there. Who are you facing? Devontae Adams. Great. Thank you. Yeah. Puzzling situation to say the least. I guess we'll see what happens. I think last week I said, I'd love to make some sort of statement about JC being benched, but I bet you something different is going to happen next week where like Zont is benched for whatever reason. And while I don't think that's going to happen, now JC is playing. So is he going to be active because Dean is hurt? Would he be active anyway? I don't know, man. It's just a confusing thing.
I forgot that Dean was also injured as of today, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
So to clarify, JC Jackson in the interview session today that happened, I don't know if it was an impromptu decision or what. He was asked if he was 100% and he said no. And then one of the reporters like followed up with like, so you think you're not 100%? And he was like, no, I know I'm not 100%. Like apparently he was pretty adamant about it. So there's some issues, which again is not super surprising. Like dealing with this kind of injury, you deal with the setback. I'm not that surprised that a few weeks into the season, he's having some issues with it. It just throwing him out there against the Dolphins and then benching him feels like the mistake here that I keep coming back to, where it's like, I understand, there's a lot of things like going out there. Like first and foremost, the medical staff cleared him. Like he would not be practicing in training camp on the first day if the medical staff had not cleared him. And then at that point, you have to listen to the player. Like the thing about these injuries is that it's so tough because if a player is like, "Hey, I'm ready," like he's so eager to get out there and he's cleared, you kind of just have to put him out there and wait and see what happens. So it's just it's a bizarre situation. It's really frustrating. This is all one big process of him getting back up to speed. I hope that that happens at some point. Again, I think people like questioning his maturity and his work ethic is ridiculous to me. Like that's the one thing that we know is that he is doing. He's working his ass off to get out there and play for this team. The question is really like confidence wise, where is he at? Like how much can he really trust his knee to keep up with things? And he even admitted that today. He's like, I don't feel like I am as fast as I was. I don't feel like I am explosive as I was, but he feels like he's getting better. And so I just think that we should have been patient all along. And I wish that we could have seen the team be a little bit more patient with him.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, it's so tough, like you said. Then there's a setback, right? So he tries to get cleared. He gets cleared. He goes to practice. Everything seems to be okay. They had a good flow for him, just like, okay, individual period, 7-on-7 period, then team drill period. So it felt like everything was going well there. And like you said, there was a setback, and they were like, okay, you're starting. And I don't know. We didn't plan for this. I don't know, man. I'm lost, but we'll find out this week, I guess, and then have more to talk about the whole saga that's been JC Jackson and the Chargers.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, are we doing the corner rotation again? Like, what is that?
I mean, I guess I would get it because it's not like Michael Davis has been lights out, but then like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, dude.
Really frustrating. And it would be great to have some safety depth to be able to like shade some coverage that way, but don't have that this week either.
Yeah, respectfully, it's going to be like Raheem Lane on one side, and then I don't know, JC as the corner, and they're just throwing it.
Yeah. I was on that Raiders podcast earlier, and they said that most teams have been playing like 8-man boxes against the Raiders this year. That's been like the reason why they haven't been doing super hot in the run game. So it's kind of pick your poison, right? Because if you pick your poison, you put A in the box, then you got to deal with Devontae getting over the top of you. And that's what has been happening. So, man, I hate talking about injuries for this long.
Hey,
what are you doing?
Spinning my. Oh, I'm sorry. You can't see it. I'm spinning my other earphone.
Oh,
looks kind of weird if I don't. You can't see it. Anyway, yes, we can move on if you'd like.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the injuries on Saturday, and we'll see what the official diagnoses are. But it's a frustrating injury topic right now. All right, Tyler, let's talk about Prize Picks and Little Caesars before we jump into this preview.
Let's do it. Let's talk about Prize Picks first. So Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. How does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they will go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, watch your progress update in real time, win up to 25 times your entry amount, and cash out your winnings with quick scoring, settling, and withdrawals. Prize Picks offers frequent discounts, bonuses, and other exciting offers. Players can enjoy community-wide promotions, including weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday and Flex Friday. I have loved using Prize Picks so far. It is a lot of fun. This week, I've got Justin Herbert with more than 284.5 passing yards and Keenan Allen with more than 82.5 receiving yards. No, I have no respect for the Raiders secondary. To make your selections, go to prizepicks.com/guilty and use the code guilty for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/guilty and use code guilty for a first deposit match up to $100. And if you don't think it works, guess what? Ask my mom who won money last week.
I finally went 3 for 3 tonight. I finally went 3 for 3. So that was fun. Won some nice money today. So Prize Picks is great. Go use them. All right. Our other sponsor of the year is Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL and the Los Angeles Chargers. We encourage you to make Little Caesars a part of your game day experience. You can order online during our Pizza pregame 1 hour before NFL games and get ready for some football and fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick the toppings you crave. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or our in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends, grab a TV, and enjoy a few slices before the tastiest hour before NFL kickoff. All right, Tyler, let's get into this Raiders preview. We'll speed through this a little bit more today since we talked about the injuries for so long, and then we'll dive into some of our other segments here. So, love the slideshow as always. If for our audio audience, this one features a basically pseudo prison scene with some handcuffs and a lock. So, obviously, playing to the audience this week with Raiders Week.
Yeah, love you, Dad. Thank you for the $50 super chat. Now let's make fun of the Raiders. Okay, here we go. Objectively make fun of them.
Yeah, objectively. So coaching staff, Tyler has the defensive coordinator, Ken Wisenhunt, picture that the Raiders social media posted from a few years back, which still is a hilarious graphic. But obviously it's some bad vibes in Las Vegas with Josh McDaniels right now. I think his winning percentage as a head coach is like below 25% now from this and his days with the Broncos. So that's fun. Mick Lombardi is their offensive coordinator. Patrick Graham is their defensive coordinator. Tom McMahon, who I think the Chargers interviewed at one point, is their special teams coordinator. So Tyler, what's kind of your impression of the Josh McDaniels Raiders right now?
They stink is my impression. And unfortunately, even my dad doesn't think they're any good, and he's a Raiders fan. So he had no faith in them. We had no faith in them. Although we thought they had a pretty good draft class when they drafted the players that they did, like pretty solid. Didn't seem to be any obvious like Cleveland Farrell. What are you doing taking that player picks? We'll talk about that draft class in just a bit. McDaniels, though, whatever it's the way he coaches, the ego, the shipping out of car, all that sort of stuff. It has not been working. We'll see how they do this year, but so far it just seems like a kind of a blank year. You know, what's going on with Chandler Jones? Is Adams going to be traded? Et cetera, et cetera. The one coaching staff member I'm kind of bummed about, I guess, is Patrick Graham, someone who we were kind of considering for defensive coordinator at one point, and it just has not worked out. Now, he doesn't have a whole lot to work with outside of Max Crosby. I mean, they gave him Jerry Tillery, and that's their best defensive tackle. And we've seen how that goes. Not great. But still, they were not great last year, and I believe they're even worse this year. So they have some good development of a couple of players on their defense, but overall it's been pretty underwhelming.
Yeah, I think just the roster management, just like the way that this regime has operated, it's very much like my way or the highway. And like I understand, like people were trying to, hype up like Jimmy G because he played under Josh McDaniels. But this is a really strange fit for me because Jimmy G was so much better with the 49ers than he was with the Patriots in limited fashion for sure, because he was able to throw it over the middle so often. It's quick, decisive play action, and it just made a lot of sense for his skill set. And now, like Josh McDaniels is kind of forcing him to throw deep outside the numbers, and you're not really throwing over the middle a whole lot. They're not using Hunter Renfrow. They're not using Michael Mayer. It's a lot of like outside passing game. So it just feels like Josh McDaniels is just trying to, again, do like the I'm a Bill Belichick disciple, so everybody bow down to me kind of thing. And right now it's not really working. And Raiders fans are so upset with Josh McDaniels. And I think rightfully so. Like you run out a guy like Derek Carr, you run out Darren Waller, you're losing a lot. Like you're doing the field goal shenanigan from Sunday night. It's a bad vibe right now for the Raiders. And I think Josh McDaniels is deservedly under a lot of fire right now.
Yeah, it's rough. Like we'll talk about some other players, but just going through the numbers of what they have. I mean, Hunter Renfrow is making $13 million this year, and he has like 3 catches for 40 yards.
DeAndre Carter has more catches than him, I think. I think that's what I saw.
It's either, or he maybe has 2, I think, or whatever it is. But it's not what you want when you pay someone $13 million, right? I don't know what Christian Kirk is making, but I'm pretty sure he got more than that last year. I mean, he made more, but certainly wasn't 3 catches for 40 yards through 3 weeks. Michael Mayer, 1 catch, 2 targets, 2 yards. Austin Hooper's our leading tight end, 3 catches, 40 yards. Like it's it is pretty grim. And I get that Devontae Adams is like you funnel through Devontae Adams. I totally get that. But the Chargers have funneled through Keenan Allen pretty obviously, and they still supported Mike Williams to over 200 yards and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns or whatever it was. So it's not, and the tight ends are obviously over 40 yards. Donald Parham doesn't get a ton of yards, but he already has more, he's got touchdown catches more than Michael Mayer has even catches at all. So it's very, very puzzling what's going on with the rest of this team. I say all of this understanding that they're about to play the Chargers and that numbers can skew significantly in one game where you're missing a couple of safeties.
For sure. I am just curious to see like how this defense evolves. There's a really sad Chandler Jones situation going on right now. The Raiders guys I talked to this week are pretty high on Malcolm Kuntz as like their second edge rusher, but like they drafted Tyree Wilson in the top 10. Like, so, like there are just some puzzling things going around there in Las Vegas. And, we like their draft class this year, but we like their draft class last year. And then they got rid of everybody. They traded They traded Neil Farrell. The other guy, I think the other defensive tackle they drafted is not on the team. They don't use Zamir White. So it's weird. It's very like, Matt Patricia vibes in Detroit kind of thing going on in Las Vegas right now.
Yeah, well, maybe then Josh McDaniels will go to the Patriots and he'll call defense then.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I do like Patrick Graham. I hope he ends up in a better situation. All right, so we mentioned some of these names already. Lots of key losses for the Raiders: Derek Carr, Foster Moreau, Rock Ya-Sin, Denzel Perryman, Darren Waller, Mac Hollins. Tyler's Tad's enthusiasm for watching. I love it. That's amazing. Key additions, not super notable: Jimmy G, Jacoby Myers, Marcus Epps, Robert Spillane. There is Jacoby Myers, I feel like, has been kind of what they expected of him. But again, like you mentioned, the Hunter Renfrow thing, they're not using their tight ends. So it's the personnel stuff is strange.
Yeah. I forgot about Darren Waller was he a traded?
He was traded. Yeah. He was like a 3rd round pick to the Giants kind of.
And situation. I knew there was a trade too. And I don't know why I couldn't pull it. For some reason, I thought Waller was maybe a last year thing. Yeah. Strange to say the least. Honestly, I thought Rock Ya-Sin was still on the team. I'll be completely honest until I did this. So now I genuinely could not name you. Well, okay, Marcus Peters, but I don't know what their DB room even looks like at this point. Moreau being gone, following Carr. Moreau got a big contract. I didn't realize. Perryman gone. Hollins, like, I don't know, man. They just continue to strip away some of the better players on this team who are solid contributors. And I get it, like Brandon Staley. You have a new coach, new regime, your guys, your scheme, whatever. But just seeing guys that contribute or really strong, contributors, I don't know. This team is just so bare bones. They have their 2 really great players, and I just don't know if they've done enough to really get anything else. It's a strange situation. They don't have a quarterback. I don't know what their cap situation looks like, but if you don't draft well either, and you don't have the right coach, like, this is kind of what you're getting. It's really a bleak outlook, unfortunately, under the current regime.
Yeah. And, it's, I don't know, like last offseason, everybody's like, this division is amazing. Like Russell Wilson, Devontae Adams, like Khalil Mack, like everybody coming over, and the Raiders kind of stink and the Broncos kind of stink. So it's funny looking back at 2 off seasons ago and looking at the different kind of narratives that came out. Real quickly, since Lexus Mexicano brought it up today, it sounds like Jimmy G has a chance to play, but not a super high one. The expectation, from my understanding, is that Brian Hoyer is going to be playing in this game, not Aiden O'Connell. Which I think is a mistake, but I hopefully you play Brian Hoyer. If you're a Chargers fan, you're rooting to see Brian Hoyer out there. At the same time, like, people keep talking about Brian Hoyer's record in his last like 15 games, and I'm like, we don't need to bring that up this week. You don't need to bring up that he hasn't won a game in like 6 years or whatever as a starter. Like, we don't need to talk about it. So we'll see. I mean, Brian Hoyer is not going to make any mistakes like Jimmy G is. It's going to be an interesting dynamic if Brian Hoyer plays instead of Aidan O'Connell.
Yeah, I wonder if McDaniels would just go with the more familiar, or, I mean, honestly, I'm curious what their goal is for this season, given where it kind of is going. Like, do you play one Brian Hoyer and, gets touchdown, maybe you get 13, 17 points or whatever, and you lose and you just continue your route to a quarterback next season? I don't know. I think it'll be Hoyer.
I would play O'Connell.
Oh, sure. Oh, 100%.
100%.
Everyone wants O'Connell to play. Boom or bust. You want him to play. But McDaniels is going to do his thing, and so it'll probably be Hoyer.
Yeah. All right, let's get to this draft class really quickly. We mentioned Tyree Wilson and Michael Mayer. Byron Young starts for them. It's been kind of a mixed bag for him. Trey Tucker is kind of buried on the depth chart. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think he's returning for them. I think it's DeAndre Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Does DeAndre return kicks too?
Yeah, kicks and punts.
Okay, so they drafted a return specialist, and he's not even returning for them, so that's where they're at. I know Jacorian Bennett has been out there. I don't know if he's like a key starter for them. And we just talked about Aidan O'Connell, Chris Smith, and then Amari Barney. And what does that say? I can't read that. Nesta Jade Silvera?
Sure, yeah, that works.
One of those. I don't know. How many of these guys are actually like playing meaningful snaps for them? Like basically it's only Michael Mayer, right?
Jacorian Bennett, I think, has played quite a bit in terms of rookie snaps for safeties. I want to say he's played like the third most. Am I completely pulling that from somewhere? I wrote this somewhere. I know Raiders fans seem to be a bit more excited about him because he's at least contributing.
Okay.
But I definitely thought that we would see more of Tyree Wilson. Not that I thought he was like that's pretty brutal. And
yeah,
the funny thing is one pressure is not too far from edge 2 for the Raiders this year. So that's a whole thing. I don't know if that's a big like Alex Leatherwood swing and a miss sort of thing where every other player is going to be okay. You could find an edge rusher and be happy about it. Like you could find a tackle and be happy about it, except for Alex Leatherwood. So we'll see. But you would expect someone a little bit older. Like it's not that he was, had all the pass rush moves. It wasn't like Anderson. It wasn't like Hutchinson by any means. But like, I definitely didn't think one pressure.
No.
I would have graded Wilson higher than someone like Thule based on what they did in college. And completely different trajectories of where their careers are going right now.
One pressure is shocking. Like he's so just like built. Like it's tough for me to look at that and just be like, yeah, like he's been really bad. But I saw an interview where he said he feels like the game is like slowing down and he was injured and like he's starting to feel like himself again. So we'll see. But like it's not gonna happen this week. You're going up against Rashawn Slater. Like you're getting shut out again. So hopefully you can figure that out again next week, I guess.
Yeah. Rashawn Slater's going to send him back to college.
It's the biggest mismatch of any individual matchup this week. I think Rashawn versus whoever the edge 2 is.
Oh, yeah. No, it was 0% pass rush win rate versus Rashawn, who wins basically 99% of them.
Yeah.
Not that Rashawn is, going to win every rep, but not going to be great.
I love that. So I think PFF credited him with 2 pressures allowed this past game against the Vikings. I think they were both on the first drive, and then it was like nothing from then on out. Like I don't know what happened there, but like he was like, "Oh, I'll give you guys a couple, and then I'm just going to pitch a shutout the rest of the day."
Yeah, you got to make him feel like they can, do something. And again, like he's so smart. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. Here's the 2 pressures. Okay, that's what you did. Fine. Good night.
Yeah. I did also want to bring this up. Brandon Staley said this week, kind of like without being prompted, that they did a lot of draft work on Aidan O'Connell, which isn't a surprise. They drafted a quarterback, and they probably did a lot of homework on a lot of these guys. So if there's a reason for you to feel like if Aidan O'Connell plays, that you can like be confident in your game plan. It's like at least you're like familiar with him. You know what he can do from a draft evaluation standpoint. You've seen preseason tape on him, so it's not like this is a game where he's just like never played and he's going to come out and maybe strike lightning in a bottle for a little bit. I see you're shaking your head. What are you shaking your head at?
Like he's not gonna do that. Did Staley say that this week, or is that something he said like pre-draft?
This week. He was asked specifically about like how are you preparing for like Jimmy G potentially being out, and he brought up that they scouted Aaron O'Connell pretty heavily.
Oh man, I'm such a goodness gracious. Yeah, that quote's gonna come up at some point if Aiden O'Connell plays, and I don't think it'll be positive. So we'll see. The corpse of Ryan Tannehill did pretty good. So I don't know. F it and check it to Devontae Adams might work this week, honestly. And so he could have a pretty decent game.
Yeah. I do have to give a quick shout out to Tara Romero. Appreciate all your guys' hard work. You guys are my top 3 favorite Chargers podcasters. Thank you. Appreciate that. She will be at the game. Hope to see you guys there. Go Chargers. I will not be there, but Tyler will be there. So go say hello to Tyler and his parents if you see him there. And go say what up to Tara as well. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the support. Tara's great. Last year, Brooke and I went to the Utah-Oregon game, and Tara was like super helpful, like giving us spots to go to and like, you know, parking and stuff like that. So really do appreciate her.
Yeah, Tara's awesome. Been commenting, communicating, all that sort of stuff. Fantastic. I appreciate the support. Seriously. I'm sitting in 231, row 7, I think. So if you're around there, say hi. If not, throw something at me from 400s or 500s or whatever.
Don't throw anything. That'd be bad. We don't want you to get kicked out of your seats. All right, Tyler, let's do our key matchups and X factors, and then we'll get out of here tonight. I'll start with my X factor here. I am gonna go, I think, with the obvious one. I think it's gonna be Quentin Johnston. I don't want to steal anything. I feel like I've been stealing your thoughts on some of these.
Well, you just stole mine, but thank you. You did again, but thank you.
Okay, well, you go ahead then. You say your prep work for Quentin, and then I'll do a different one.
Honestly, there wasn't much to it because, and it's really, I guess Josh Palmer as well is partially looped into this, but it's really just the replacement of Mike Williams. How do you facilitate getting targets to whoever the next guy up is? You know, Josh Palmer is going to be the wide receiver too, but does that mean he is the second guy in targets this week, or is it Quentin Johnston? There's something about, strangely, the way that they've been using Mike Williams is the way I sort of envisioned a bit of Quentin Johnston. And they've sort of said as much, like he says as much, like, I'm the X receiver. I'm developing into the next receiver. So you have these handoffs, you have these screens, you have everything on the boundary, all that sort of stuff that I feel like Quentin Johnston could do. So it's a potential big game. And look, man, the only reason it won't be a big game is because I have him on my fantasy football team. But I think this week my team can put it together and the good juju will prevail. I'm very curious to see what they do with him because I don't know. It's tough to say because Josh Palmer, like, okay, I was wondering, how do you manufacture the deep ball? How do you manufacture the chunk plays? Where, I mean, Josh Palmer had 2 of them last week. One incredible throw from Justin Herbert and one terrible one that was still a touchdown. So how do you manufacture that? You know, the explosive plays that Mike Williams had. Is that Josh Palmer or is that Quentin Johnston? I don't know. I'm just so curious how they're going to use him because now they have to. They didn't really want to before. Now they have to. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Popper pointed this out on a few podcasts this week that, like, when you have Mike Williams and Keenan Allen out there, you have to honor both of them equally. Like, you can't actively double team one or the other because then the other guy is just going to feast. Like, there are times where Mike Williams is running a deep post or a deep over, and Keenan Allen is coming open on a dagger route, on a shallow crosser, on an out route, like anything like that because of the attention that Mike Williams takes away from him. So this is super important because I think Quentin Johnston is going to be that guy who does all the deep route stuff. I don't think that's Joshua Palmer's game, so to speak. I think he can do certain aspects of it. But when it comes to like truly like taking attention away from Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer, like I think that's Quentin Johnston's role. I was listening to the Underdog Fantasy guys, Josh Norris and Hayden Winks, and Hayden Winks basically said like his his vision for what Quentin Johnson could be with this specific trio now that Mike Williams is out is essentially like Jalen Guyton plus. Like it's a lot of posts, it's a lot of goes, it's a lot of corners, just like really taking advantage of his speed, which has really popped on tape, in my opinion. But Justin's got to throw some of those. Like we have to see him get some targets. We have to see him get some catches. Otherwise, teams are going to just start doubling Keenan Allen. And I think that's kind of like your worst case scenario here is that teams can start taking Keenan away, which is what happened in the second half of the Jacksonville game on offense when they just were daring Justin Herbert to throw the ball to Michael Bandy and DeAndre Carter. So it's like you need Quentin Johnson to play well, and you need him to do so vertically to take some attention away from Keenan Allen and make teams respect him more so than they have showed already on tape.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised by, I guess it hasn't been a ton of time, and it's not like he's out there for 45 reps. So you can build a rhythm, but it feels like with Jalen Guyton or even Tyron Johnson, Herbert's rookie year, maybe by default, he just had to trust those guys, and he threw it. Like his connection with Guyton was pretty instant. So I'm a little surprised someone like Johnson, I know he's not as fast, but he's, at that point in their careers, a much, much better player than Jalen Guyton at that point in his career. I'm a little surprised it's taken this long for him to throw it that way. At the same time, I guess a game plan like the Minnesota Vikings had doesn't really afford you the opportunity to take a ton of those shots. So we'll see. We'll see what the Raiders pull out. I feel like this is the week. I feel like this is the week you almost got to just try stuff with Quentin Johnson, see what sticks because you have a bye week. Like this to me feels like a game you can not only get away with it because you're playing a subpar kind of team, but also you have a bye coming up. So give it a whirl, give it a shot, see what you got.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's probably what you need to do. And at least like put it out there that you're going to throw to him deep. Like, cause if he's just going to run deep, you're not throwing him the football. It's not really going to do anything for you. So getting to my X factor, then I'm going to talk about Gerald Everett. I'm going to assume that he does play in this game. But I think that he is kind of an underrated step up potential guy, if you will, because there is some of what Mike Williams does over the middle of the field that is not really going to be Quentin Johnson's game right now. There's, it's some of that will go to Josh Palmer too, but you're not going to replace Mike Williams with one guy. Like that's basically our whole point here is that Josh is going to have some of it. Quentin's going to have some of it. And I think Gerald Everett is going to have some of it as well. Like we saw some games last year where he was doing some of the mesh concepts. He was doing some of the slants and working him more over the middle of the field. I think makes sense given his skill set of how hard of a tackle he is. So I think that he's been underutilized a little bit and understandably so with the way that Keenan and Mike have been playing. But like you're not going to throw all of this at Palmer and Quentin. And I think there is a space here for Gerald Everett to go from earning 4 or 5 targets to 7 or 8 targets. And maybe that turns into like an 80-yard game and a touchdown kind of performance, which we've seen from him before. So if Gerald Everett can have a big game, I think that is something that can be very useful for them too. And we've seen him, take some handoffs from time to time. The game is kind of struggling right now. So maybe that's a way for them to get some attention away from the interior is doing some jet sweep things to Gerald Everett. So I think Everett is a good X factor spot for this week.
Yeah, that's a fantastic call there. I really hope he plays. Just looking at the numbers, 6.5 yards after the catch per reception, which is 6th out of 44 and ahead of George Kittle and those other guys, Sam Laporta, Luke Musgrave, etc. I don't see any reason why you shouldn't get him the football. I feel like at moments last year, I almost got it because the hands weren't always perfect and there were some miscommunications or whatever. But settling into year 2, I know it's a different system, but settling into more chemistry with Herbert, I feel like this is a player you can lean on quite a bit. Frankly, I don't see why not. Like every time he's received the football at this point, it is like it's the numbers say 6.5 yards more per reception than he got at the time of the reception. So I see no reason to not lean into him and do something more with him, especially if you don't quite trust Quentin to do all that just yet.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think Simi Fehoko kind of works his way, and I'm not expecting Simi Fehoko to do much this week. So we'll have to wait and see how that one works out.
Yeah.
All right, Tyler, what's your key matchup of the day since I stole your X Factor?
You're good. I'm looking at not a specific player, but I'm looking at the Raiders' left side of their offensive line. I wrote it somewhere here. I don't have the exact numbers, but basically, running to the left of the center or the left guard is the only way they've been successful all year at 4.5 and 5 point something yards per carry. Everything else is below 4 yards. They've only been successful running to that specific side. So, how do the Chargers attack that specific side? How do they hold up? I think Sebastian Joseph Day on rewatch was much more of a hero of that game than I gave him credit for. I think he looked really solid in moments. I think he was both great against the run, great against the pass. He was hurt for a bit there. I was worried. Came back in, had some big plays. So, how they specifically work that side of the line feels like a key matchup for me. There's some, definitely some obvious matchups with their two best players, one being Devontae, one being Max Crosby. But I feel like that one in particular could help things just a bit, just to slow Josh Jacobs. Because again, I thought last week the Raiders, I know it was only 3.5 yards per carry or whatever it was, but that was better than 1.3 and like 2 the previous 2 weeks. I think they're starting to maybe figure it out. And in a game where you might have to run it more, and I would get why they would run it more, especially after watching the Vikings success last week, I would keep an eye on that matchup.
Yeah, I think their offensive line is vastly outperforming any kind of expectations anyone outside of Las Vegas had for them. They're tied with the Chargers in fifth in pass blocking efficiency rate. They're fifth in pass block win rate on ESPN. So they're protecting the quarterback at a really high level, which again would be a surprise. The offensive line and their run blocking win rate on ESPN, I think, is bottom third of the league. So that's been kind of a struggle for them. So this definitely feels like a Sebastian Joseph Day game where he needs to truly make an impact. Austin Johnson, Nick Williams, that's kind of like your run defense trio, right, for them. This is an important Morgan Fox game as well. One of the things that he talked to you about in the offseason was being able to rush better against the center. And we've been told by the other Raiders podcasters this week that Andre James one-on-one is not really a situation they feel comfortable with. So Morgan Fox against the center, I think from a pass rushing perspective is a very important matchup this game too.
Yeah, it's a surprise seeing, honestly, of all the units for the Raiders, and I guess if you don't draft some positions, I guess you'll fall off. But it was a surprise to see all 5 of their offensive linemen that have been starting above a 97 in PBE, just because it always felt like in the last few years there's been 1 or 2 weak links. They've been okay so far, which is honestly more than I give them credit for, than I would have given them credit for.
Yeah. So you mentioned Devontae Adams. Like, I think it's kind of the obvious one, but how do the Chargers go about defending Devontae Adams is kind of going to be the key thing for that defense. The explosive plays that you all know about. I am curious about this because they didn't trust Michael Davis to go up against Devontae Adams last year. It was Asante Samuel Jr. Who was basically matched up with him the whole game. And, Asante took some lumps, but he also gave it right back to Devontae on some times and had one of the craziest interceptions I've ever seen in my entire life. So what's the plan this week? We've seen the Chargers go from man heavy to zone heavy to kind of a mix of both against the Vikings. They did try and double and shade coverage towards Justin Jefferson quite a bit. Unfortunately, did not work. But the things that Justin Jefferson does really well at, I don't know if that's Devontae's game at this point. Like, Devontae is so much more precision over the middle, timing, whereas Justin Jefferson just ran by Michael Davis a couple times. So the plan versus Devontae, I think, has to really be crisp here. I know other teams have focused on like stopping the run, but this is 100% a game where you need to have like all your attention on Devontae Adams because the Raiders haven't shown any kind of trust in their other options. So double team him, shade coverage his way. I think you have to mix up his looks. Like, I don't think this is a game where you can just throw Asante at him the whole game. Like, I do think that Michael Davis should see some for him and be physical with him, press him. Asante can play some zone, double team him. So especially if you have the safety injuries, like, you got to find a way to stop Devontae Adams from going off for 220 and 3 touchdowns or whatever he did in the first game last year.
I think that's what it was.
Or was that the second game?
It was a demolition both games. I know Asante gave up like 200 something in both games combined. Yeah. It was definitely not pretty. We'll see, because I feel like with Derek Carr, they had this opportunity where, even for better or worse, that he would push the ball down the field. Does not really seem to be the case right now with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's not really what Josh McDaniels wants. They want that kind of, hey, we're gonna get 10 yards, 15 yards sort of thing. This is if Jimmy G plays. Jimmy G's second lowest big time throw rate of his career. So I don't really know how much they're going to be trying to push it like Jefferson, who could just, oh, cool, here's an 80-yard touchdown, here's a 52-yard touchdown. That could sort of still be Adams, but I think it's less so his game, like you mentioned, can still go ahead and get, 20 yards, 30 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards. Still fantastic. Still one of the best in the game.
Yeah.
The offense just isn't really suited for these big, explosive 50, 40 yarders. So yeah, how they defend him, it will be interesting, because there's no respect to Myers. There's no Addison, I think. And so far, based on usage, there's no even Osborne on this team, even though there should be Hunter Renfrow. There's no Hawkinson on this team for sure. So it really does feel like, look, if Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow have to beat you up to win, fine, so be it. Just don't let it be Devontae Adams. It feels very specifically just him, whereas against the Dolphins, obviously, or the Vikings, you had to look from other guys.
Yeah. To your point, the average depth of target for Devontae Adams has come down a full yard from last season. Some of that is just like that trust level between Derek Carr and Devontae, like you mentioned. Last year, his average depth of target was actually the highest number of his career at 12.8. This year, it's at 11.6. So it's still a good number, right? But it's not 12.8. The yards after catch per reception for Devontae has also come down. Last year, and for his career, he's basically around 5 yards after the catch per reception. This year, he's only at 2.3. So something to monitor there. I don't know if that's how teams are playing him or if he's slowing down, which it doesn't look like it, like everything else. But that's an interesting one, that he's kind of struggling to generate yards after the catch per reception right now.
Interesting. Yeah, look, it'll be a good game. Whatever Adams' line is at, it's probably the over. Just don't let it be the explosion takeover game.
Yeah.
Which he's done.
Yeah. Let's hope the Chargers at some point theoretically should be able to stop giving up explosive passes of over 40 yards. So hopefully this is one of those.
One of us is frozen.
Oh, was I frozen? Did you hear me?
No, but you said hopefully they can stop giving up explosive 40 yarders or something.
Yes, hopefully.
Cool.
All right. That's going to do it for us tonight. Tyler, any other final thoughts before we head out?
Nope. I will save all my predictions for Saturday. Hopefully the Chargers are more healthy by then.
Yes, hopefully. All right. Appreciate all of you guys in the chat. That was a lot of fun tonight. Hopefully you enjoyed our week 4 preview of Family Trust Respect Week. We'll be back live on Saturday morning for our our coverage wrap up, I guess. Should be a lot of fun. And then we'll be live on Sunday, probably after Sunday Night Football, since Tyler will be at the game. And so we'll see how that one goes. All right. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. As always, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We genuinely appreciate all of your support, and hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. We'll see you on Saturday. As always, bolt up.